So if the UK is going to prosper after Brexit, it needs to get its mojo back. It needs to be more entrepreneurial. And we're going to talk about that today on the Debunking Economics podcast with Professor Steve Keen. Yes, the UK needs to lead trade, not scrape around, looking for trade deals that'll probably mean more for the other side than it does for the UK. In short, whilst we prepare for Boris's no-deal Brexit, should we also make entrepreneurship and innovation a big deal for Britain? That's today on the Debunking Economics podcast. I'm Phil Dobbie. Welcome along. Well, Britain gave us the steam engine, railways, the electric motor, the jet engine, stainless steel, canned food, frozen food, the telegraph, chocolate bars, the fire extinguisher, the ATM, the World Wide Web, the lawnmower, the light bulb, the kettle, bikes, colour photography, the match, vaccines, caterpillar tracks, the tank, the cloned sheep, the bra, rocket fuel, the toaster, the radio telescope, the ballpoint pen, suntan lotion, scotch tape, aerosol, the wheelchair. But what has it done lately? Perhaps it's not been doing a lot because we are hamstrung by Brussels. And that's all going to change once Britain is out of the EU, once we've left that free trade agreement with the 27 nations of the European Union and the other 40 countries that the EU has free trade agreements with. It's all going to be so good then. Just imagine the reason that Britain only exports $400 billion worth of goods is because we are shackled by Europe, even though, of course, the US only exports $1.2 trillion worth of goods, 3 times the amount the UK exports, but they've got 5 times the population. And they are unhindered by the EU. But let's ignore those facts and just concentrate on the opportunity for Britain, the big stuff we export. Transport, like cars and machines and gas turbines and the like, and chemical products like medicines and oil and a bit of gold. That's I've just outlined 3/4 of our exports right there. So how do we export more, Steve? Obviously a lower power might be a good start, but do we produce more of what we're producing right now, or do we need this new entrepreneurial Britain that's going to create new stuff, and how do we get there?
Well, this is actually Mariana Mazzucato's major point, that entrepreneurship and innovation is what you need to inspire, and one element that can do that is the government sector. Financing, and because it can afford to lose money, whereas the private sector, you have to have very wealthy individuals to be able to afford money, to lose money, to actually have innovation take place, because most innovations fail, but the ones that succeed wildly. So there's a whole world. How do you generate that focus? And the trouble is with Britain, that it made the decision under Maggie Thatcher back in the 1980s to go with a service-led economy. They mentioned such a thing as a post-industrial world. You didn't need the industrial sector. You could make the money up by service exports. And if you look at, actually, I'm going to check. Were you looking at the Atlas of Economic Complexity as you go?
Yeah. With a lot of information.
Okay.
So you go and do that while you're looking that up.
No, don't. It's already in front of me, mate.
Okay. Because the question I was going to ask was, for all of this, has our membership of the EU made the UK too concentrated? I mean, is that idea that, we're going to concentrate on the service sector, we're going to be the financial centre for Europe? Has that, has the EU taken us down the road of comparative advantage, that very ugly road? And is that part of your argument of why you think we should be out?
I think this is part of it, because if you look at it wasn't just the EU. I mean, this is Maggie Thatcher made 2 decisions. One was to promote the financial sector, to remove government regulations, but almost without fail, those regulations were about what happens in the financial sector, not what happens in the industrial sector of the economy. So basically, why do we have those regulations? Because back in the 1930s, we had a thing called the Great Depression, caused by banks behaving irresponsibly. A whole lot of legislation got put in place to stop that happening again. And then the deregulationists go and remove it once more, and we get back into another huge debt bubble. So but the EU at the same time, if you look at what, this is where it's great to make a comparison of the UK to Germany. I'm looking at the UK's chart as you are right now, and information and computer technology is 21% of exports. Insurance and finance is 13%. You've got pretty much 40% there. Add in transport, which itself, travel and tourism, and then transport, you've got virtually 50% of the economy in the service sector. Now, if you take a look at, let's actually both do that. I'm going to bring up another tab.
I think it's more than 50%, isn't it, the service sector in total? But yeah.
33, it's about 43, 44%. There are cars there as well.
In manufacturing.
But if you look at Germany, then Germany as an exporter, I'm waiting for the data to pop up here. Come on, looking at a blank screen. Thanks very much, guys.
I love this. It's almost like real-time radio, isn't it?
Real-time stuff.
But it's just podcasting that we can't bother editing, so we just leave it in. Well, let's just sit around and wait for it. But I mean, Germany. But we know Germany has a far more. I mean, the basis of it. We know that Germany has a far bigger manufacturing export base than we do.
And when you look at the percentage of GDP that's generated by the manufacturing sector, back when Maggie made that decision, manufacturing in the UK was about 20% of GDP, and it was the same in Germany. You fast forward to now, it's 10% in the UK and still 20%.
And obviously, we can't have everyone working in the finance sector. So even though
people are selling debt, and that's the trouble. They only worked as long as there's a debt bubble going on. That's what Maggie wasn't aware of. So when the debt bubble banged out, the growth in the finance sector stops. It still takes up a huge percentage of GDP, but your GDP is growing more sluggishly. So you've got to go back to what you rejected back in the 1980s, which is manufacturing.
Right. And should the focus there be trying to create an export base for that, so you get a higher proportion of GDP from exports? Or can we look at places like America, for example, which has a sort of it does have a manufacturing base, but they've also got a huge deficit, and they sort of seem to be doing all right, don't they, by nature of their sheer size?
Well, they've also got the fact that they're the reserve currency, which makes life rather easy for them. They can't, the American dollars are always going to be in demand, and you can buy anything with American dollars. With UK pounds, you've got to convert them to American dollars to finalise those purchases. So if you're running a trade deficit, as the UK is doing, then you're in trouble.
Right.
So what you have with the UK is, it's first of all got an overvalued pound compared to what the manufacturing sector needs, because the service sector, even though it's been ineffective in replacing manufacturing exports, is still huge. So you've got, I think, on the order of 40% of exports from the service sector.
Right. But you're saying there's like the service sector is a bad thing. You seem to be tying the service sector with the finance sector. I mean, they don't have to be the same thing, do they? So you look at companies like Microsoft.
They are. I mean,
well, do you
add up all the hairdressers in the country? I mean, partly.
Well, no, but if you look at is Google a manufacturing base? It's a service.
It does have an ICT. That's fair enough. Okay, but
yeah. So I mean, that has to be the growth area, doesn't it? But if you're that raises the question: if you're going to develop exports, do you try and expand the industries you already have, or do you try and launch new high-tech industries from scratch? And logic tells.
That's again
logic says you try and build on what you've got, like cars, and like for example, can we make better electric cars than the Germans do? But you also look at the growth around the world, and it's all high-tech, isn't it?
Yeah, and that is partly what also the Atlas of Economic Complexity, which you said, let's plug it because it is a fabulous resource. It's a database developed by computer scientists, not by economists. Therefore, it's already off for a good start, and it takes the Standard International Trade Classification System (SITC) and has data going back about something like 30 or 40 years of every country in the world down to, I think, a 6-digit level in terms of the accuracy of how they classify different industries. And that shows you not just what are the exports of a particular country and what the imports are by sector. It also lets them develop a map of saying, using algorithms to mathematically say how distant is one industry from another. So they have clusters of industry. Obviously, for example, oil, coal, all this sort of stuff goes in the resource sector. Cars, trains goes in the manufacturing sector. But glass, for example, is closely related to cars and trains because you have to have windows on them. Therefore, these two industries are not particularly far apart. And what they say is, in terms of looking at how countries succeed in developing, it tends to be by taking industries that are already close to what you've currently got and creating a new industry out of the combination of old ones. That's where the innovation tends to occur. So they advise you to, as you say, build on what you currently have. But of course, in the UK's case, that has been dramatically converted from what used to be a strong manufacturing sector and one that now is quite weak. But a major part of that getting over that weakness is a devaluation in the pound. And that's certainly been happening.
Obviously, that's good because that makes it cheaper for us to export stuff. But then if we're not making all the stuff in this country, then it's more expensive because we've got to import all those parts, which are going to cost more.
And you've got to basically start building your own machine tool systems. This is the part that Germany has.
Well, we've got actually a lot of machines are made in Britain. We do have that advantage. We actually tool up Europe to a reasonable extent, so we do have that on our side, I think.
But not as much as Germany, I would say.
No, of course not. Yeah.
We're looking at, look at the section with the manufacturing section for the machines in general, in terms of the proportion of UK trade are about 40%, about 60% of what they are in Germany. So the tool sector and of course the technical training that goes with it, that's vital. So I've seen some comments in the UK media about promoting trade education. I think that's an excellent idea. It's one thing that all this focus on universities, which really do not provide the skill set people need in manufacturing as skilled workers, nothing like it. That's good to see at least some emphasis going back on trade.
And there is a lot more to this discussion, which is a discussion that has to be had, doesn't it? I mean, everybody is talking about Brexit. Nobody is talking about what Britain does after Brexit. How does it get its mojo back? Well, listen to this conversation in full by becoming a supporter of Steve Keen on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Prof Steve Keen or become a subscriber at debunkingeconomics.com. You get access to this and all the other podcasts in this series. I'm Phil Dobbie. See you again here soon. Thanks for listening.